Hello, everyone. This is Lala, and today I'm going to be reviewing slash recapping slash retrospectively talking about the Gauntlet 3. And this season is one that on one hand, I really like it, but on another hand, I'm very mixed about it. So I do think a lot of the drama in the season is very good, and it went on from the very beginning of the season to the very end of the season. I feel like a lot of the veterans brought their A game to the season when it comes to this element, and the veterans definitely competed well in the season. But on the other end, it did cause for a very lopsided season competitively, with the veterans just winning damn near everything. And I believe even though once they lost, they threw all but one of them. So the rookies didn't really have much of a chance. And while the rookies did lose, and it was karmic to seeing the arrogant asshole veterans lose, it was due to a rule that really isn't in place in any other season, so you don't even get that much satisfaction on it. At the same time, when I talk about the challenge, I talk about it on the grounds of it being a reality TV program before a game show or a competitive sport show, if anything else. So I might kind of tip the favors in regards to liking it more than being a mixed bag. So with this season, it had the very last gasp of World Rules, where it had the season that was supposed to revive the show a few years after it was cancelled came, and a few people from that season came here, but World Rules was permanently cancelled after that season, which I believe is called Viewers Revenge. The rookies, and I'm mainly speaking about the one-timers here, really weren't memorable. I don't recall any of them really making much of a mark on the challenge, with the exception of Atori, and that really isn't a positive. And a lot of the rookie team in general just didn't have a whole lot to do, with there being a few standouts, and the standouts on the rookie team are definitely great. This was also around the time where the misogyny that the Era 2 guys are known for really starts to take a hold here. But at least the woman on this season stood back and they held her own. But it would only get worse from this season onwards, and especially after this season. And while this season isn't the worst when it comes to misogyny, it is definitely where it is definitely more noticeable and more rampant on the edit. So it's something that you really can't ignore. So this season is the first season where they have hour episodes. But if you look at each hour episode, with the exception of the very first one, they're essentially edited as two 30-minute episodes put together, so I'm kind of going to formulate this video based off of that. Anyways, the cast are in Mexico this season. Beth talks about not having any friends, which is per usual for her. Brad and Tori's relationship, or upcoming relationship, is hinted at, as Brad mentions that he got out of a 3-year relationship, and Tori mentions the hot guys are on the season. And Johanna also talks about moving in with Wes and working out for the season. DM and Wes are still DM and CT, what the fuck was I saying? DM and CT are still together, and we learn that Melinda and Danny are now engaged. The teams are split into veterans and rookies, just like the Gauntlet 2. The winning team is able to pick who goes into the Gauntlet from the other team and who to save from that team as well, while the losing team chooses the other opponent. I definitely like this format a lot more than the format in the Gauntlet 2, where the captains have to go in no matter what, as I just really thought that wasn't fair. It took out a lot of the competitive drive in the season, and it made a lot of people cold, not only just in the game, but mainly in the edit. The tug of war is the challenge where the winner gets the better sleeping arrangements and rooms. To the shock of no one, the veterans do end up winning the challenge. Coral and Beth are stuck together and they clearly don't like one another, though honestly I don't remember them ever interacting in past seasons. And the rookies are sleeping on bunk beds with bugs all over their stuff. Everyone is having fun drinking and all, and CT is on his best behavior after being kicked off early last time. Brooke is talking to Tyler about men making her sick right now, though she isn't innately attracted to women, so she wants a dick but not the person behind it. And there's a lot of commentary about her being like a faux bisexual or a faux lesbian. That's something I really don't care to get into right now. Anyways, Brooke and Evelyn hit it off, and Evelyn is going for it, as well as Tyler and Ryan starting to make out in the pool. The newly single Paula has fun with Derek and Adam on the same night, though neither one of them will end up in romance for the season. Frank and Jill starts getting close. Bananas and Casey are a thing for this season, and the future married couple, Tori and Brad, immediately hit it off. CT, Brad, Katie, and Carl are talking about how they are the OGs and they are targets who need to stick together. And this is very ironic since CT would be the main one going hard against Carl and Katie later on in the season. Pinata Pit is the challenge where the pinata is hit, where they have to get their designated ball in the mud pit, and the mud pit challenge is a classic of the challenge for a reason. Evelyn and Cora immediately start arguing in the challenge, since Evelyn tried helping Cora with the ball, and Cora didn't like how Evelyn handled the situation, where they could have handled the conversation privately, but she wanted to make a big show and spectacle out of it. And then we have Cora making a transphobic comment about Evelyn having a penis. Which, yikes. The veterans do win the challenge after a sudden death round against Derek and CT, and it's obvious CT would win this. The veterans vote to save Ryan and choose Nehemiah for the Gauntlet. The rookies vote in Alex, who was not in the challenge really, and Nehemiah wants to go against him anyways. And the rookies have a rule where whoever is nominated gets to choose the other person they want to go in, though this may change as the season goes on. The nominees play in the first field elimination, where they are both tied to the same rope, which is tied around a bunch of things, and they have to cross their lines. And this is also a classic elimination that is always fun to watch, since it's a mix of physicality and endurance. To the shock of no one, Nehemiah beats Alex. Robin and Katie talk about how, because there's no money at the end prize, Robin realizes that the guys have no incentive to protect the woman, and will throw missions to get rid of the woman. CT talks with some of the veterans about trimming the fat, and he is very drunk as he's just ranting about the entire situation. He continues his drinking, and he ends up getting into an argument with Cora as he raises his hand in her face, and she does not appreciate him doing all that bullshit, as it is disrespectful, and he threatens to send her in, where she mentions her going home is not the end of the world, which is a hint for what's to come, and she calls him bipolar. DM tries to calm CT down and tells him to go to bed, but he's refusing to listen to her, and the two end up arguing. And honestly, it's not shocking that they broke up soon after this, just based off of this interaction and others throughout the season. Paul calls CT a crackhead to DM, and she's just ranting even more. I really don't have anything to say about Alex. He didn't show much personality during his time on the show, and was a weak competitor overall. It's not shocking that he became a one-season wonder. So I'm going to break up the rest of the episodes into two parts. Since despite it being 40 minutes, they were edited as two 20-minute episodes put together. So I'm just going to continue along with that rhetoric. Nehemiah decides to speak to Beth about how he has been avoiding her since they've joined the season, essentially, and he's offended by her comments on the duel about them being in a showmance, and she denies, stating that they never hooked up. He kind of goes in on Beth in confessional, where a bunch of people are clapping, cheering him on, where Beth states that Nehemiah is doing this to get in good with the others. And I know they are very good friends now, so it really isn't a big deal, but you can definitely tell Nehemiah was trying to get in with the cool crowd, and they were definitely a bit more than friendly, though they weren't in a showmance, so the situation's kind of sticky. Angel knows that the rookies see her as weak, and her getting this content means that she is going home, in my opinion. Though there is some signs that Nehemiah is interested in her, especially with some of the back shots that they are showing. Frank is aligned with CT and mentions that the rookies need to understand that you need to befriend them. Screw You is the challenge where they have to run around some bulk pole thing and they're in pairs, where the others go through a bunch of obstacles that I don't really care to explain and kind of just To the surprise of no one, the veterans win the challenge where they decide to save Brooke and send in Jillian to the Gauntlet, where she and Frank are annoyed about the situation. Jillian wants to go against Angel and they give her what she wants, but Tori decides that she needs to call out the alliances. Though literally everyone has alliances and she will join up with the Austin people later on in the season. Janelle mentions that Tyler is aligned with Coral, which he denies. Frank and Jillian they are accused of being in an alliance, and some of the rookies, like Melinda and Johanna, are shutting it down, since the vets are allegedly spreading this to weaken them, though they're shutting it down because they're being hypocrites because they are obviously in alliance as well. Ram at Home is the elimination where they have to push a bag and whomever beats the others end up winning, where Jillian easily beats Angel. She is a nice woman, but Angel really didn't offer anything to the show, so it isn't shocking that she never came back, despite TJ predicting that she would. Whatever flirtment she had with Nehemiah also barely got focused on as well. Rookies need some morale, and the vets know that they have a huge advantage. Frank and Jillian are getting really close, and Tyler shades them for being the most boring couple in America. And we do see Zach trying to infiltrate with the vets, though Beth knows that the vets are going to blow up soon. Tyler is happy that Ryan is in the house and how he's so not his type, but he's crushing hard on Ryan. So Tyler has this vulnerable conversation with Ryan, who tells Tyler that they can't get serious and making out is as far as it's going to go. So he essentially rejects Tyler. And to be honest, it kind of seems like they decided to hook up because there is no other gay person in the house, despite them not being one another's type, and it kind of led to the situation that ended up happening. The challenge is called Roped In, where 12 poles are attached to swings and there are puzzle pieces and poles on each lug, where the person on the swing has to lead the others and to where to place the puzzle pieces. Of course, the veterans win the challenge, and Derek is throwing a huge tantrum over losing the challenge, and his team being incompetent. The vets choose to save Tyree and nominates Tyler for elimination. John is still not over being eliminated by Tyler on the duel, though John said at the time that he understood and got the choice that Tyler made. Tyler and Bananas end up arguing over the choice, and then Janelle argues with Tyler over his behavior. When I watched this the first time, I didn't realize that they were from the same real world season. So now, watching it the second time and getting that context, I understand the fight more. He says that she's acting like a bitch and they continue arguing where he wants to play for the other team now. Tyler doesn't want to choose to face him in the elimination, so the team chooses Frank to go in, though Frank mentions that Ryan is the weakest on the team, so he should go in. Force Field is the elimination, and Frank does end up beating Tyler. We have more talk of the veteran woman knowing that the vet men are plotting against them. Tyler had a really nice arc during the short time he was on the show, with fighting his Key West people and the train wreck with Ryan that ended pretty quickly. I know he has a hiatus for the next several seasons, but I am shocked that it took him a while to come back, where he's very different. We have more nauseating stuff with Evelyn and Brooke, where Evelyn states that she would choose Brooke over the challenge, which so hasn't aged well, though Brooke does not want Evelyn to have unexpected expectations, and props to Brooke for at least being realistic about this. Coral speaks to Beth, Katie, and Robin regarding if they lose, who they want to choose their own opponent or not. And Robin mentions that Evelyn is going to pick them all off pretty much for all the guys. So she has a very male centered, male identified mentality when it comes to the season and the game. Ring Out is the challenge where they have to put on clothes, soak them up, put them on a ring where the people on the opposite end of the rope will drain them out. Brooke wants to volunteer to be a soaker and a leader since she knows that she cannot be saved twice, and Johanna calls this out because Brooke is weak. So the two women end up arguing about it, since Brooke knows that the team doubts her and it's really stupid. I do like this simple challenge, and despite it being close, the veterans do win this one. The veterans decide to save Tori and choose to send in Jillian yet again, since they think that Brooke can beat her, since they want Brooke back because Brooke is weak and they know that Brooke being on the newbies team will help out the veterans. And they also know that the newbies are starting to go against Brooke, which does for sure end up happening. Ball Brawl is the elimination where the balls are scored 1 to 5 and some of the balls are worth most points, where they have to bring it back to their section. Jillian beats Brooke, and she has an emotional goodbye with Evelyn, though Cole throws some shade about Brooke being a fake lesbian. Brooke had her arc of maybe realizing that she might be bisexual, though she found the bond with Evelyn as something that she wants to find in a man. It's memorable enough, and I know she has one more season, so we will see where that goes with her. It is Adam, Katie, and John's birthdays, and this somehow leads to them ending up shaving Zach's head. Okay, anyways, the vets decide to barge in on Johnny and Casey, who are having sex essentially, and she ends up jumping out of the window naked, which is just a ridiculous scene. Tyree gets a call from his girlfriend, who says that she is going through heart surgery and tells him to stay in Mexico, which makes its way to the vets, though they clearly don't show how this happened. Blind Man's Gaze, where everyone but one person is going through the maze, where the unblindfolded person is guiding them is the challenge here. And I was expecting more from this challenge, though a part of me thought that this was entertaining as well, so it's kind of in the middle, or I'm kind of mixed on it. Danny decides to shade Beth's age and mentions that she'll be blind soon anyways, which ridiculous, but the rookies actually win the challenge. They decide to go balls out, where Johanna wants to target Brad, Evan, and CT, though they are arguing about which one of the three needs to go in, since Tori clearly doesn't want to have Brad go in, and Tyree does mention Brad, and she takes it really personally, so she gets in Tyree's face, and they end up having to be separated. Adam is protected, or saved, by the rookies, and Evan is sent into the elimination. CT and Evan are talking about how Johnny does not have a chance, and Bananas is not shocked that CT is calling him out and choosing him to go into elimination. CT and Johnny are campaigning for. Sorry. CT and Johnny are arguing, and Johnny is also campaigning for Easy to go in, since Easy will be a liability in the finals. So Johnny and Evan end up arguing about it, since Evan was the one who suggested that he wants to go against Bananas, and CT mentions that they don't want to risk Evan going home by sending in Eric. So the two continue arguing for a while, and John is actually bringing up a lot of good points, and it's foreshadowing. Casey, of course, doesn't want her boo to go in, and then as the elimination is starting to happen, which is called Sliders, and it's kind of just like a puzzle, John calls out Evan about it, and Evan kind of denies and admits it in the same breath. And then CT continues yelling at Bananas about the ordeal, and Bananas definitely has a right to feel screwed. And there's definitely a lot of foreshadowing with the situation here. Okay, so the elimination is kind of just in my opinion, and it's one of the weaker puzzles that they've done on the challenge. Evan actually doesn't feel the best about beating Bananas, who is someone he considers a friend, and Tyree knows that he needs to go home to his girlfriend, so he leaves. Bananas has, or John, has yet another short run, but at least it's somewhat notable here. He was able to get his revenge on Tyler, which will cause them to eventually be cast as rivals together, and then was scapegoated by his team, which caused some minor drama with CT and Evan, which was decent enough with the foreshadowing pertaining the finals. He still isn't giving main character energy yet. I don't have many thoughts on Tyree, though I do understand his departure. This might have been the season where he went the distance on, so it's a loss for him, I guess. Tori, Johanna, and Janelle are talking about what they need to do since they lost the weaker woman, but they can't afford to lose anyone else, and it seems like Janelle knows that she is in trouble. DM and Evelyn are talking about how it would not be bad if they lost the female challenge today, and we do see Frank speaking to Adam about the Austin Five, which is Melinda, Danny, Johanna, Nehemiah, and Rachel. So they need to be targeted, and Frank is definitely trying to protect her. MJ is brought in as Tyree's replacement, which the team appreciates since he is very strong. He's like 6'5" or 6'6" or something like that, and he left his 5-month-old child to be on the season. Push It is the challenge where they have to push the truck all the way through the sand, but they have to take off the wood out of the truck to create a path. We essentially saw the same challenge on the Gauntlet 2, where it was more interesting there than it is here. To the shock of no one, the veterans win the challenge, but we do see Melinda getting knocked by the board on the challenge, so she's taken to the hospital with Denny accompanying her, where she does have a concussion, but it did keep her out of the gauntlet. The veterans choose to save Johanna and to nominate Janelle, since they think she will send Jillian home, since they know Jillian will be voted in by the rookies. Janelle does state that she wants to go against Jillian, and she tells Jillian, as well as Frank, this, where he says it's not fair that Jillian should have to go in for a third time, while no one else regarding the woman has gone in. The deliberation continues with the motion that they're going with the nominee choosing who he wants to go in, and we do see Tori and Frank going at it about keeping the rationale, which he doesn't want, and MJ, who just arrived, is turned off by Frank's antics, where he'll just continue to complain about Frank the entire time he is there. Bob Brawl is the elimination, and Janelle does lose against Jillian, who literally just did this elimination. I shockingly found Janelle to be a bit more interesting in this season, since she at least had that drama with Tyler, but she really doesn't stick or stand out in general, so I see why she wasn't on the flagship again, but of course she'll be on All Stars like 15 years after this. Clearly, Tipsy CT is telling MJ that he, Nehemiah, and Frank will continuously be thrown into elimination, since the vet men, at least, are not going to lose, and how they're not going to win the final. Though MJ realizes that the fat has been trimmed on their team, so that maybe not be the case. The men watch Frank and Jillian hook up in the washroom, but we move on to the challenge, Man Overboard, where they are on a sled 20 meters, I think, above the water, where they have to pull across each side. One person drops off once you make it to each side, and everyone has to go in a certain amount of time. The vet men do make fun of the woman. Evan and Kenny are really horrid, and this is clearly the point where any sense of likability that they had in their prior seasons is completely gone here, and essentially for good. And Melinda realizes that the challenge she realizes as the challenge starts that it is not smart for her to fall into the water and hit her head wrong, since she still has a concussion and she could literally die if she falls wrong, and it's definitely a smart choice on her end. The veterans win yet again, where they decide to save Ryan, and there's some debate about which of the three men they should nominate, but it does end up with Frank. Frank wants to go against Zach, so they end up playing in sliders, where Frank does beat Zach. The veteran men decide that now is the time that they need to get rid of the woman, since there's six of the veteran women. But it seems like Beth, Kitty, and Robin are the big focus at the moment, since they feel like the woman did nothing in the challenge. And I don't really think how they handled this is good, but we'll get more into that in the upcoming episodes. I really don't have much to say about Zach. He didn't piss me off, and he did get that haircut, but I do see why he never came back, since there just wasn't anything that he was offering, despite being relatively harmless overall. DT, Danny, and Evan are talking about cutting the fat off, and it's ironic that Danny is talking about cutting the fat when he has been the fat in every challenge season he has done up until this point, and honestly, even after this point. Coral, Katie, and Evelyn are talking about the men's plans for the woman, and it is interesting that they're talking to Evelyn of all people about this, since they know how male identified she is with her mindset in this regard. And then we see Katie arguing with CT about it, where he is denying that he said it, and he's clearly trying to gaslight her. Though he notes in the confessional, I believe, that he thinks that the women are nervous because they know that out of the 5 more gauntlets made for the women, 4 of them are getting cut. The challenge is assembly required, where they have to dismantle a pyramid and build it in the same way built on another spot, which the vetmen do throw for the newbies, and honestly, I don't really care a whole lot for this challenge. The veteran women clearly know what is happening, and it's annoying as how tactless the men are about it. Even Adam, who hasn't done shit on this show up until this point, or even afterwards, to be honest, is bragging about it, and is showing his ass. The newbies decide to save Casey and nominate Coral, and it was split, and they flipped a coin with Evelyn being the other option. Coral calls the newbies a bunch of pussies, and then she rants to the vet about it, and she does not want to beat Grandma Beth in a gauntlet, where the woman wants to send someone who can get rid of Coral. And I think it's very interesting how Coral calls Beth old, though someone will call her old a few episodes later. Anyways, the cast are hyping up Beth versus Coral, though I don't recall them having any strong interaction before this season. So it is Ball Brawl, and Coral goes in on the other team for telling them, sorry, not the other team, she goes in on her team. What the fuck are you doing? She then gets into it with Kenny and Brad, since they are risking her and showing how expendable she is. then. Of course, Coral ends up beating Beth here. Beth was actually pretty calm this season, and it is a shame that this is her last flagship season. But at least she went on calmer terms, though of course we will see her on All Stars. Props to her for being a true OG and lasting this long on the show, as she made it to mid-era too, despite being on the first real challenge season. Annie is talking shit about how Coral didn't prove herself. And one of the biggest flops of the show, saying this is utterly pathetic, and for someone who's never made it to a final, before or after this. And Coral realizes that she is more alone in the game than she thought. Paula and Danny are getting closer on a romantic point of view, and the men, mainly Brad and CT, are continuing to mention that the women need to go. Walk the plank is the challenge, and it's pretty self-explanatory, where people from the opposite team has to knock someone off the plank once they try to walk across it, and it's a fine enough challenge. Casey kind of picks a fight with Coral about the order that they're running into, because Casey is a pussy. But despite this, she is never one of the women considered to be a weak link that needs to go. The veterans do end up winning the challenge, where the vets know that Ryan will be called in no matter what, but they do save MJ and nominate Derek, though Paula tried to protect him. And it seems like this is their way of trying to save Ryan by giving him Derek. The vets nominate Ryan, and the two men compete in sliders, where the vets literally help Ryan and guide him through the elimination, which he does win against Derek. Derek really didn't stand out much, and honestly, I feel like I've said this for a lot of the first timers on the season. But I guess due to his romance with Paula, he stands out a bit more compared to the other rookies. He has one more season, so let's see what his challenge career ends up with. We get more of the focus on the Brad Tori showmans turned relationship turned marriage turned parents. And they are strategizing about how to keep Tori from elimination. Danny and Melinda end up arguing about how he is fine as a veteran while she is not in the same position due to her being a rookie and how she could end up going home. Rachel decides to yell at him. He throws a tantrum because they are misreading him somehow or they think he's not taking the situation as seriously. And all the veterans are making fun of the entire situation with the implosion of the Austin Alliance at the moment. The couple then decide to go outside and they argue some more. And I forgot that this is the Austin Alliance for a bit earlier. Because it is a female gauntlet, the vets are planning to throw it. Pole push is the challenge, where each group has to push the pole to the other side, and the rounds will be based on genders, though the vet guys realize that they can't throw it with 4 rookie guys, as it would be too ridiculous and too unbelievable. I actually did enjoy this challenge overall, and it's definitely a unique twist on it. Tori has a defeatist attitude already, and to be honest, she is fair in this belief, just based on how the season's gone regarding the challenges so far. Of course, the veterans win the challenge, where they decide to save Rachel and to throw in Melinda, though they don't care about Danny being upset with it. Melinda wants to go against Jillian, and she threatens to go against the team if she does not get what she wants, and I don't know with everyone wanting to go against Jillian. It clearly hasn't worked beforehand, so I don't know why they think it's going to work now. Anyways, this all pisses off the non-Austin people on the team, which causes some bickering on the rookies. And of course, Johanna is trying to defend Melinda, but it ends up with Tori being thrown in with Melinda to play ball brawl. Tori says that she is not going to compete initially and she's in the process of quitting, but Brad pretty much tells her that she isn't going to quit, so she does play despite all of that mess, and Tori does end up beating her friend Melinda in elimination. And I forgot to mention that Tori kind of sided with the Austin Alliance by this point in time. What I remember of Melinda in the season is her getting a concussion, which did suck, but I do guess that she has some fire in her regarding how she handled the last episode or two with her alliance imploding, but in general, she didn't have a whole lot to do in the season. Granny and Johanna end up going at it since he thinks that she turned on Melinda. But apparently, Johanna didn't really make a worthy vote, which she does mention, though her voting that way made it very easy for Melinda to get voted in. And Johanna says that no one likes Danny and that he isn't funny like Evan or Kenny. Overall, it's a pretty funny exchange between the two of them. Tori ends up picking a fight with Jillian, and the latter is shocked that Tori still has a bitchy attitude despite winning the elimination. And Tori doesn't like that she's considered weak and emotional, though she does not want to see the workies win anymore at this point. And honestly, they're both just being ridiculous, and Tori really just isn't helping herself at all when it comes to the likability and the entitlement factor. A tipsy slash drunk CT rants about being sick of carrying the woman, and he is kind of trying to size up MG here, and they're talking about the men's gauntlet and what's going to happen. Literally, in almost every single scene I see of CT in the season, he is drunk. It's really bad. Anyways, I Dig You is a challenge where everyone is buried, but the races have to answer trivia, where they let them unbury the others in the casket. The challenge is okay, especially when you mainly see the diggers just answering the questions and digging. The vets, of course, win, despite them wanting to lose, because Nehemiah answered so many questions wrong, and the vets chose to save Ryan, and nominate Frank for his third gauntlet. Tori is fine since she wants Frank gone, and knows that she won't want to get rid of Nehemiah, since I guess they're still in alliance at this point, despite it really being his fault that they lost. The rookies decide to nominate MJ, and they compete in Ankle Breaker, where they are attached to one another's ankles and they have to crawl to the other side. And despite MJ being bigger, Frank is able to tire him out partially by digging a hole so he really can't be pulled back. So Frank does beat him. Evelyn really wants to face Coral in the Gauntlet the next day, and Coral walks in on Evelyn talking about her to Robin and Ryan. MJ is someone that I'm really struggling to get into, since while he is a strong enough competitor, he really offers nothing as a character or a personality, and he isn't much of a strategist. He hated on Frank, but it didn't make him unique, since most people hated on Frank. He was just there, and I see why he doesn't last long on the flagship overall. Evan, Kenny, Evelyn, and Adam are talking about getting rid of Katie and Coral does see them talking about her. Evelyn doesn't feel comfortable with going to a final with several of the women left, and the way she says it really just rubs me the wrong way, since she says that men are never weak when it comes to these sorts of things, and I guess she'll be eating her words in the final. Cole confronts Evan about him talking about her with the others, and he tries to talk around it and to kind of deflect responsibility. And Cole is annoyed that she keeps making friends with others, then questions people's friendships with her, and he tells that he is her friend, and she doesn't believe it. She's clearly referring to all the drama she had with Mike on certain seasons, especially in the Gauntlet and even the Inferno to a lesser extent in this regard. And it's definitely a common thing with Korra where she kind of struggles with friendship and gameplay and dividing the two at points in times. The challenge is called Over the Edge, where they are over a 25-story building, and they have to walk across a plank, go down the ladder, and grab a flag. And this challenge is kind of just as well as standard, in my opinion. The Batman clearly throws the challenge, and Kitty is visibly pissed off about how they are handling it. And Coral is also calling it out, since they both think how they are handling it is just very disrespectful. And Katie was in this position, I believe, on the Inferno. Yeah, I think it was the Inferno. With how her team just blatantly threw a challenge to try to get her targeted, essentially. The veterans lose, and the newbies protect Katie. Why did I say Caitlin? Anyways, to send in Evelyn. Coral already knows what is happening regarding everyone sending her in, so she refuses to give them that satisfaction. As she is walking off, Evan follows her and he mentions that it is a new generation of people, or he says this in the confessional, and she isn't used to it. I do think there is some truth to this since Demi, all of course, allies no longer were on the show, and she was always in the majority in her prior seasons. But now that, like he said, a new generation came in, she really doesn't know how to handle it. But I also think there's a distinction between how they handle things in the first era and how the era 2 people are handling things now. And I think that's why she is so turned off. Anyways, Coral tells Evan that she is quitting and she's not going to be around for people who don't like her, how they need to check her resume, and how she doesn't deserve to be treated like this, and she calls him out for being a bad friend. There really is no point in her fighting for a team that doesn't want her there, as she doesn't want to earn money with them, and she knows that her chances are dim. She says her byes to Katie, she leaves, and that is the last we see of Coral on the challenge. Now that they have to choose another woman to go against Evelyn, who is annoyed that she can't go against Coral, and it just really ruined her day. Evan tells the vets the news, and Casey volunteers, but she is already getting voted in anyways, though she rants about Coral fucking them over and how Coral is old, who needs to stop doing challenges. Though Casey herself would end up doing All Stars when she was older than how Coral is at this point in time. And like I mentioned earlier, it's ironic because Coral shaded Beth for being old a few episodes prior. Anyways, the two women compete in Ball Brawl, and there really is no chance, despite Evelyn letting Casey gain a point. But in general, Evelyn dog walks Casey. What a season Cora had. It was interesting seeing her on the bottom this time and how she had to navigate that. But she really was the last of many of the OG's vets retiring and just struggling to adapt with it. She gave some good confessionals, some are problematic as well, but she got into a lot of drama in the season. While it sucks that she quit, Cora left in her own way. Casey is someone who's going to give some good confessionals and give off her bubbly personality, but she's not going to offer up much in the competitive or political level, so I do see why she has one more flagship season after this. The rookie men feel confident enough with their team, though Ryan knows that if they lose, he will go in, since the vets can't save him twice in a row, and Nehemiah knows that he is a target as well. Frank rants about how their team is not a dream team, since himself, Nehemiah, and Julian are the only great competitors, and Johanna is alright enough on a competitive point of view. We see Frank and Kenny wrestling with one another, and it gets a bit serious, kind of like Kenny's wrestle with CT last season, where Kenny's ankle is effed up, where he has to go to the hospital for a bit, and Frank isn't remorseful at all. Mexican blanket is the challenge where they have to roll in a blanket and roll across the sand with being wrapped in their blankets. I found it to be a pretty neat and cool challenge that is so simplistic. The veterans nominate Nehemiah in hopes that Ryan can beat him, and Ryan has to go in, since there's no other option, essentially. They compete in Ram at Home, and everyone knows that Nehemiah is going to beat him, and he clearly does here. Katie then goes on a rant to Robin since she knows that the guys are going to throw it to get rid of her next, and Robin is trying to be optimistic about the situation. Just from what I remember, this is one of Ryan's better seasons since he had that short arc with Tyler, he lasted long in the season, and he had a few other moments in the season, but the standards are pretty low with Ryan in general. Evan and Kenny talk about how they need to just make it obvious about during the challenge, and everyone, including Katie, knows that her team wants her gone, though obviously the rookies wants to keep her, where Frank will plan to guide her through the elimination, whatever it is. The challenge is Chill Out, where they have to dunk into cold ice water, submerge themselves, and run back out. I'm not very fond of the challenge, and they have to do it over and over and over again. I am honestly shocked no one got hypothermia during the challenge, but at least they did have a medic with them while doing the challenge. Before the end of the challenge, Danny wants to leave, but he makes a deal with the other rookies about saving him on the next male gauntlet, and everyone is confused as to why he is still in the challenge, and the vets immediately realize what Danny did, so he's not a part of the team, and he is target number one now. They call him out on it, and Danny mentions that he just joked with them, which is so bullshit. And Katie refuses to have a deliberation to deal with the fake bullshit, so she ends up volunteering to go in, though she knows that there is no choice anyways. The vet save DM and nominate Paula, where she and Katie can beat in the Sliders elimination, and despite Frank coaching Katie, Katie does lose against Paula, where Paula is being coached by Adam in the elimination. Katie still had her entertaining moments here and there, especially in her last few episodes where she was our target. I appreciate that she wasn't ghosted in the edits like she was in the prior Gauntlet, but she's more of the same overall. There's just not much else to say in general. Penny and Danny are going at it over the deal he made with the rookies to keep him safe. And Danny mentions in the confessional that they are all being hypocritical because the vets have been making their own deals with the rookies the entire season. Frank decides to throw Danny under the bus in front of everyone, and I honestly don't know why the hell Frank did this. And everyone knows that Danny is probably going to go home, where it was his best chance to make it to a final. Danny complained about the situation to Nehemiah about being targeted right before the final, and to be honest, it seemed like Danny was probably always going to be at the bottom of the men, so this was most likely bound to happen, anyways, even without that situation. We have another moment of the season with an alcohol induced CT picking a fight with someone, and this time it is Frank about to intimidate who, and Frank is giving it right back to him. Adam ends up separating the two of them, and this gives CT some flashbacks and some triggers pertaining to the real world season, where in that situation, he pushed Adam, who separated CT from another fight. In this instance, and in this season, he dumps beer all over Adam's face, and Adam now wants to fight CT. So the two end up arguing, where CT thinks that Adam is being a baby, and this is clearly a lead up as to what will eventually happen on the next season that they are on together. Well balanced is the challenge where they have to stand on a circular platform to balance it, which was a cool challenge, seeing them all figure it out and show some tension in the teams, especially with the veterans. The rookies do win the challenge, though it is clear that the vet men who aren't safe or who feel safe don't really care about performing well in this challenge. The rookies do save Eric, which is the reason why they end up winning the season, so it's smart, and Frank is pushing to send in CT, but the woman wants to send in Adam. And we see the newbies argue about it, and we see Adam and Danny fighting at the exact same time. Adam is the one who was nominated into elimination, where the Reds do vote Danny into elimination, which was so foretold over the last two episodes. The elimination is Ball Brawl, where Adam does end up beating Danny, and this was pretty shocking since Danny having a better build than Adam. If I remember correctly, I think this is Danny's most successful season, not just competitively, but from an entertainment point of view. I found his downfall in the last few episodes to be very entertaining, though his entitlement, despite not being a standout challenger, was annoying as hell throughout most of the season, but he is more memorable than many of the other veterans who made it this far, so I guess this is his peak. The rookies feel like they are going to lose, and they have a defeatist mentality, where the vets have a meeting about the strategy for the final tomorrow, where people are worried about Eric quitting because they don't know how equipped he will be for a final. The final is called Army Strong, where everyone has to cross the finish line, and it was apparently a rule here and not in any other season because apparently the military sponsored this season. They have to swim to the beach, and Eric is already struggling, though the final literally just started. They now move on to run and go into a bucket of ice to assemble and fetch puzzle pieces, and then they go on a run, all chained together, where CT is yelling at Eric, who's about to pass out, and they are pulling him. Brad and CT end up arguing due to the treatment of Eric, and then they have to screw some metal parts before running off. Eric ends up passing out and is taken to the hospital when the rookies move on to the slider puzzle. Of course, the veterans are pissed off because their chances of winning are over, and the rookies do end up winning the season, despite the veterans catching up and making it to the finish line first. But everyone needed to make it to the end, which caused a bunch of meltdowns and cry fests from the veterans. One thing I will say that I don't like about the Gauntlet seasons, especially the latter two, is that most of the finalists are always so under edited, especially due to the bloated casts. Adam did not get much to do until his last few episodes, where I did find him to be a fun enough contribution there, and he had some shocking, competitive, and dramatic moments. Brad really only had his romance with his future wife and mother of his kids, Tori, but he is one of the few who were easier on Eric. Speaking of Eric, he literally got no screen time in the season until the very end and the final, where he gets out, but it's arguably the most memorable and reference moment of the season. CT is arguably at his worst here, where he's always inebriated, he's picking fights with everyone around here, and he's at his most sexist here. He didn't get kicked out this season, which I guess is a plus, but it is one of his ugliest showings. DM was borderline invisible throughout the season, but I do feel like she was more present than Gauntlet to Katie. And I think this would be the last season where she and CT are together before they broke up. I will talk about the both of them at the same time, but both Evan and Kenny lost any sort of likability they had here. Both were horrendous with the overt sexism, douchebaggery, and their type of humor was just gross throughout the season. Paula mainly had her romance with Derek, which was boring, but she didn't piss me off this season, so she's one of the more likable vets, despite her having a pretty under the radar edit. Evelyn definitely came off as a sourpuss this season and had some male identified mentality and moments, which is ironic based on how the rest of her challenge career work go in that regard. Robin didn't have much to do in the season, but it was interesting seeing her as one of the first targets of the vet woman, but she ended up blending in and making it to the finals. All-star performance, not just as a competitor, but as a character who is funny, shady, and gives good drama. It's really a shame that this is his last season, and they didn't put him on more seasons, but he apparently got loaded after the season and runs an uber successful company, so good on him and his life achievements post-challenge. Jillian definitely had an all-star season as well, where she was thrown in many eliminations, got in a few fights during the season, and seemed a lot less fearful than she was on her first season, so I did enjoy her throughout the season, though her edit wasn't as large as her boyfriend's. The sister had a calmest season, and while I would not say that she is likable, she didn't annoy me, though she didn't have too much to do, and benefited from her real world Austin crew having the numbers. Nehemiah also benefited from this, and he was thrown in a few eliminations, and while he is kind of likable, the star quality at this point really just isn't there, so he's just missing something. I was hoping that Rachel would redeem herself after her horrendous performance last season, and despite winning, she didn't do that at all, as she was still made fun of as a competitor and didn't offer anything else. I'm fine with this being her last season. Tori was definitely unlikable and annoying, but I kind of respect how she didn't give a fuck as a rookie and let her voice be known. But the battery in her back was definitely given by her dating Brad, which is a boost that most rookies in general just don't have. So, I finally got access to a reunion, which I am going to recap here, which I didn't have a chance to do during the last few seasons. So, of course, in the reunion, they get right to discussing the final, and the rookies don't feel guilty for winning, essentially due to Eric fainting. Eric's performance is definitely discussed, and he mentioned that going steady would have won them the race, while Evelyn rolls her eyes. And Evelyn mentions that Eric was drinking with the rookies 3 hours later after the final finished, so he clearly wasn't in a dire situation, where he kind of talks around all of this. The two continue arguing about not expecting him to do so poorly in the final, and he in general is just very defensive about it. Evan justifies not targeting Easy throughout the season since he felt like he would have went home, so essentially he was scared, despite all the talk about the women. Easy mentions that he only speaks to Brad, Cole, and Katie because the others are still pissed off at him due to his performance. Evelyn talks about her showmance with Brooke, and it was kind of a rebound for her, but it fell apart after the season where Cole is cheating the hell out of the showmance, and everyone called her cool for her comment about the fake man on the season, though she was right. We move on to Coral calling out the people who told her that they wanted to keep her to her face, but then were talking shit in the interview room where both she and Katie just started ranting about confessional gangsters, essentially. Kenny does decide to get involved for some reason and mentions that they just wanted to get rid of Beth, and Coral mentions that the guys didn't care about which woman with areolas went home. And most of the men are just rationalizing that it was mainly about Beth, who apparently claimed to throw challenges which just didn't make it on air. Katie and Coral continue to rant about how other vets denied their plan of cutting the fat to their faces because they are scaredy cats, but she called out Evelyn's male identified pathology, which is foreshadowing based on what will happen to her throughout Evelyn's remaining seasons. Evelyn didn't feel any loyalty to anyone because she doesn't speak to them outside of the game, and she didn't care in general since she knew that she could win herself out through any gauntlets. Evan literally stutters when he speaks about the situation, and Cora mentions that they all could have played the game and had fun, as well as standing with their friends, and he kind of just mentions that Katie wasn't game this season, and she wouldn't have won the season, though Katie mentions that she won once, where Evan never has won at this point. Coral does talk about her departure, and she was told that she was going to leave a week. Sorry, she was telling the cast that she was going to leave a week earlier, but she was convinced by Evelyn and everyone to stay, where she was confused since why would they talk her into staying when they just wanted her gone? So she saw that as them being two faced. Evelyn calls out Cora for playing the victim all the time, and then they argue some more. But Cora, in general, just out argues Evelyn, who's very nonchalant about the situation, and she doesn't have many rebuttals. We do learn that Brooke is dating Evelyn's ex. Frank and Jillian are still together. Brad and Tori are still together, where CT and DM and Wes and Johanna broke up. And there's definitely some interesting Kenny and Johanna banter that leads to some foreshadowing for next season. We do learn about Rachel and Easy hookup, which why, and the reunion ends with some more arguing with Coral and confessional gangster Evelyn. So that was probably the best reunion of the older seasons, and this is definitely the longest challenge review that I've done thus far. So there's a lot of context, there's a lot of meatiness to the season, and a lot of the drama is definitely very good. At the same time, the lack of competitiveness between the two teams really wasn't, but I don't watch this as a fifth sport, especially since this is a messy MTV reality show, and it definitely brought in the messiness. And while you definitely saw some hints of the misogyny that would plague the later parts of this era, it really wasn't that out of control yet. And I do think that the cast started bringing it. I think this is the last of the trilogy seasons where the Inferno trilogy obviously ended last season and the Gauntlets ended with this season. And the season did save the show. Apparently, it was very close to getting cancelled last season, and this season helped the ratings for it, where it continued it continued to the point where it's still on as I'm recording this 15, 16 years later. So it clearly did what it needed to do. But a part of me is wondering if them pushing this vile antics from the cast with this season and in the future seasons was a way to make sure that the show stayed on. In general, the Gauntlet 3 is definitely a messy season. It's definitely a polarizing season due to the lack of competitiveness, and some of the drama is a bit too much for me. But I had a whole lot to talk about with the season. In general, I think the Gauntlet seasons aren't the best. They are mainly good, they're not bad, but I probably put them in the upper or middle tiers. All three of them, technically. And right now, I'm thinking this one's better than the second one, but barely. And honestly, they could switch. And there's even sometimes where I think the first one is more palatable than the other two. So I'm kind of just all over the place. So we're in the middle of era 2, and we're just going to crank out the rest of the era. Though something tells me that it will be very frustrating to make it through the rest of the seasons. And I'm so not looking forward to having to watch The Island. Anyways, thank you all for watching, and I'll be back with other content soon. Bye.